Assalamu alaikum. I hope all of you would be doing well. Let's start the discussion around the professional skills which I was referring into my previous video. So let's start looking into detail one by one about each of the professional skill which the examiner was referring. The first professional skill which was referred was communication. So what is communication? What is expected from the communication? So communication is divided into three aspects. The first aspect of the communication is to use of particular format. And use of particular format means, for example, you are supposed to write a letter, you are supposed to write a report, you are supposed to write a memorandum, or you are supposed to write the notes, whatever it is. So that particular format, that's one of the tool of the communication. Second, I always guide to my students, the communication includes this thing as well. Make your own formatting style. And that's just for as a reference. For example, you are addressing a question and there is a general theme of the question. For example, adjustment of losses. So it could be your main heading. Make one format for your main heading. So for example, it is bold, italic, underline. I'm just giving an example. Then after this main heading, there is subheading. In the subheading, I am like, make it bold plus underline. Then after this subheading, there is subheading. By the way, plus caps as well. Subheading. Subheading is like, make it, for example, bold plus italic, let's say. If there is third, fourth layer, subheading. For example, keep it bold. So that's just an example. So you can change it. But whatever you use it for that particular question, use it consistently. So it should not be like that. Part A of the requirement follows this thing. Part B of the requirement, you change your formatting style. No, that's not the effective way of communication. Okay. This is, and along with all of this, your calculations and workings should be well organized. And methodical manner. Right? So 1, 2. Third is to ensure adherence with any specific instructions. Any specific instructions which are given to you in the question. For example, specific instructions are about the discussion, about the calculation. So that is the specific instruction. So if it's like analyze the situation, if it's like discuss the situation, if it's like calculate and evaluate. So these kind of verbs contains a message in it, what your examiner wants you to do, right? Plus, keep one thing, remember, since now the paper is on CB platform, so this is one of the important consideration. First, to ensure adherence with the specific instructions and use of appropriate tool in your answer. Tool in your answer means, for example, for example, uh, whether the answer should be on Word, whether the answer should be on spreadsheet, it is your thing to analyze it. And whatever you analyze, you have to act accordingly. It's not necessary that you can pick only one tool in one situation. You can pick up two tools in one answer, but the linking between them, that should be very clear. So for example, the working reference, the working one in a spreadsheet, working one should be same. Uh, or for example, if you are doing calculation, and for any calculation you want to discuss anything, so it's like for explanatory notes, refer to note 1 in the word processor. So word processor note 1 referencing should be clear, so that again your manager would not struggle to link the information. Again, you have to think about the convenience of your manager, which is the examiner in this situation. The second skill is about analysis and evaluation. So now what is expected in this professional skill of analysis and evaluation? In the professional skill, the analysis and evaluation, let me divide it and discuss it into the different dimensions. What is analysis? Analysis is basically demonstration of application of underlying text rules, and it's the demonstration of, like, I know this, demonstration of application of underlying text rules. That is the analysis skill in a specific scenario. Like for example, just to share with you, in a specific scenario, because it is important. As in, for example, if I talk about a loss-making situation, where the examiner asks you something to discuss about a loss-making situation, and the business has just started. So there, along with all of the release, you are supposed to discuss the opening year loss release. Or if the business is ceasing, so along with all other release, you should not be talking about the carry forward of loss. So that is the demonstration of the application. Okay. At times in this analysis piece, examiner expects or asks for any kind of recommendation or conclusion, or giving an advice, right? So here, for example, like whatever recommendation, conclusion which you are going to give, there you should demonstrate, like, I know all of the rules. Like for example, if it's a business start situation, you have first apply the technical knowledge, and then you need to analyze which one of the situation is better by considering the facts of the question, not in general, right? And as part of analysis, as part of professional skill, one very important aspect is uh, you should use the relevant data from the scenario, right? You should pick the relevant data from the scenario, end, you should justify your answer by reference to the scenario rather than keeping it as a general discussion, right? So how this thing can be done, for example, if the examiner asks whether we seize that business on for example 31st December or 30th June, what will be the consequences? So while comparing, at least use the date so that examiner can correlate it. You are what you are talking about rather than keeping it a generic word of 6 months or year end or half year end. So that's not like gives the exact, and if the examiner has used year end or half year end, so you should use the same terminology as compared to 31st December or June. So at least try to use the words which are used in the question to to give an impression like what you are talking about, right? The second skill is about the evaluation. Evaluation is basically demonstration of demonstration of balanced appraisal to determine the impact of course of action. Again, so that's not like that's very difficult, or that's very a close line to differentiate between analysis and evaluation. But if someone asks me evaluation, evaluate it. So evaluation would be basically, for example, on the one side, I would get one relief, for example, a deferral relief, for example, a rollover relief, for example, incorporation relief. And on the other side, that also qualifies for the BADR kind of relief. So as part of evaluation, I need to demonstrate which relief I'm going to take and why I am going to take that one. Why not considering the other one? Why not prioritizing the other one? So these kind of things should be well demonstrated by the like reasoned justification. First of all, as part of my discussion, for example, why it qualifies for rollover relief, why it qualifies for BADR, that should be a part of my answer. If I am like BADR is beneficial or rollover relief is beneficial, I should be clearly calling this out along with the along with the appraisal approach. Why I am saying rollover is better, why I am saying BADR is better. So that should be there, right? The, the third professional skill is about skepticism. So skepticism, what is skepticism means? The skepticism, we heard normally this term in our ACCA journey, normally in the audit and assurance paper. And since then, the mindset about the skepticism is whenever we listen about any of the information, first challenge it. It is wrong. So no, here in the professional skill, the skepticism does not mean the information is wrong or you are going to challenge the information that the information is incorrect. The answer is no. Here, the word skepticism means, for example, in a given situation, in a given situation, you need to identify, for example, what information is missing for a relief to qualify. So, for example, in BADR situation, just to give you a reference, in BADR situation, it is mentioned that the person holds more than 5%. The person is The person holds more than 5%, the holding duration is more than 2 years, but employment status is silent. So skepticism refers, you need to challenge the information, as in like it is not clearly mentioned whether the person is employee or not. So this is the kind of information where you need to apply your skepticism, like what information is missing for a relief or allowance kind of stuff, right? uh, Generally, where the skepticism is used. So generally the skepticism is used in the ATX where a set of information is provided, and for example it is asked to you guys what additional information is required to make sure for the availability of this relief. So whenever it is written what additional info is required, so this is generally the part of the skepticism. So it's not only on this side what additional information is required, what irrelevant information is given, that's also part of the skepticism, right? Okay. So, and again, if anything is not clearly mentioned and you have to approach it, you have, and you are taking an assumption, for example, for BADR, employment status is not mentioned. So either you will apply it or not apply it. If you are not applying it, then it means you are not assuming for the person to be employee of that company. You need to mention that. And if you are taking BADR, it means you are assuming it the person to be employee of that company. You are assuming it. You are supposed to mention it, right? So whatever is there, you need to specify, and whatever is missing, you need to specify. That is basically the part of the skepticism relating to the question. The last one is commercial acumen. Now, what is commercial acumen? So just to give you a background about the commercial acumen, all of the professional, strategic, professional, optional exams are commercially realistic as possible, and so is the case with the ATX as well. So ATX paper is also the commercially realistic as possible as it can be, right? And it varies from a large group of companies to a single individual person. So at times in a given situation, there can be a situation where you are supposed to have discussion about a group of companies or about a single person, about a close company, about a small enterprise, about a medium enterprise. So it's like range from one extreme, large group of companies, other extreme, a single person, right? So commercial acumen, the first thing. Here, the candidates are therefore required to understand what advice is or is not appropriate. Like one advice is not suited the best always for all, right? So probably we are talking about tax savings, but tax savings involves the immediate cash payment and the entity is suffering from cash. So giving the advice which ensures the highest tax saving considering the immediate cash outflow would not be beneficial for a entity. Rather, the deferral relief which defers your tax would be more preferable. So this is the commercial acumen, which means you are not only think within the text box, you need to think out of the text box. You need to demonstrate awareness of the constraints as well. And that's not the text constraints, that's the non-text constraints as well. For example, that can be liquidity. For example, that can be ethical, that can be legal issue. So whatever is there apart from the text knowledge which impacts the decision making, that should be the part of commercial acumen. Further, in the commercial acumen, the examiner expects you to take a forward-looking approach. So, for example, uh, uh, different things could have different implications. And to avoid the implications, for example, what will be the convenience from a future perspective? If in future this arrangement remains the same, what will be the consequences? If in future this arrangement would not continue, what will be the consequences? So this is a kind of commercial acumen which examiner expects. Further, last but not the least, in the commercial acumen, there is one more expectation of the examiner, which expects a broad awareness of the purpose behind a particular area of legislation. Like why any particular legislation is made or is withdrawn, or if it's an anti-avoidance legislation, why this anti-avoidance legislation is introduced. All of such things are part of the commercial acumen. So this is the broad discussion on the commercial on the professional skills set which examiner expects you. And again, if you guys analyze, that's not something very different or very unique. So that's something which normally we do take care of in our exams, but now there is a formal marks allocation for all of these things. So previously it's a general expectation you will follow this, and these things are like on a good to have basis. These kind of things are used to a word like good impression on the examiner, but there is no more good impression. It's directly the marks which will be available, right? And as we discussed uh, in the previous part, the one uh, professional skill will not be examined in the uh, in the section B, and that is basically the communication part, which will not be examined. So apart from the communication, all of the skills can be examined in section B, and all of the four will be examined in section A. So thank you very much for this video. We will be meeting again in the next video for the discussion on ethics. Thank you.